I organized my social location paper into 3 sections, as well as an introduction and conclusion. In the 3 sections, I discuss my ethnic and cultural identity, my gender and sexuality identities, and finally my feminist identity, while analyzing them through class readings. So when I thought about my identity, I thought about how it's made up of a bunch of different identities that make up my whole identity. They're all interconnected, and this made me think of how all these intersections make up me and make up other people, and when meeting someone, you might not think that you have so many things in common, and then you realize that you actually do. The reading that I'm going to focus on the most in my paper is Bobby Harrow's Cycle of Socialization, and the groups, agent and target groups, that Harrow explains as an agent group that is a group that gives you some sort of power, and a target group as a group that you're oppressed in a way. The first section of my paper is on my ethnic and cultural identity and my privilege. So growing up in a split household, and by split household I mean I'm mixed race, so we had 2 totally different cultures, 2 totally different religions and races. My mom is Filipino and my dad is European American. So after I read Peggy McIntosh's article on white privilege, I read that list and I realized that I actually related to a lot of that, and it made me feel like I understood how she described privilege as a set of rights you're born into, because I definitely don't think that I or anyone else deserves a lot of the rights, I guess, that she wrote about if other people don't. I also realized that I have a certain privilege because of being part of a middle-class family as well as mixed race. I felt like race was really important to me when I was younger, and I felt like I didn't have a understanding of where I belonged, especially on my mom's side of the family, where everyone has a lot darker skin than me. But now I've come to realize that I've learned to appreciate differences and learn from them, and I'm appreciative of the household that I grew up in. The next section of my paper is on my gender and sexuality identities. One thing that I think is important about my gender and sexuality identities is that I understand that there's a certain fluidity to those identities. Evelyn Blackwood referred to the idea of gender and sex difference in her writing about Native tribal beliefs and transgender individuals. And something that I found really interesting was that they didn't have such a strict distinction between gender and sex like we do now. I do identify as a woman. I also identify as a lesbian, and those are 2 target groups that I'm a part of, as Harrow explained, groups that are associated with being oppressed. I'm also, as I identify as lesbian, I identify closely with the LGBTQIA community. There are a lot of things that I feel welcome to in the community. I see people that act like me, that make me feel comfortable and welcomed, but there's also a part of this community that I don't agree with, which Feinberg brings up in the article about the transgender movement, and how I've seen that in the LGBT movement, transgender people are a lot of times hated on and segregated from everyone else, even though there's such a close tie between the LG movement and the BT movement, because there's just so many close ties to protesting and the rights that we've gained. The last section of my paper is on my feminist identity, and this is one of my most important identities because feminism to me is equality for all people, all identities, no matter what, social background or location, as like age, size, race, sex, physical location. I think it's so important because I changed my major from forensic science to gender studies because I'm just so passionate about equality, and I would like to work with people who are questioning their identities, and I want to be able to get everyone to have a support system that they deserve. Um, and to end my paper with a conclusion, I bring it back to Harrow's cycle of socialization, and I really liked how they explained this socialization as kind of never ending and always evolving. I feel like I'm not done being socialized. It wasn't just through growing up in my childhood. I feel like my socialization is always going on, and I'm learning from everyone's differences. That being said, one thing that I took away from writing this paper is that some identities are more important to me, and I make some identities more visible in certain situations than others.